On July 23, 2025, the world paused as news broke, a moment that seemed to freeze time for millions across the globe. Social media feeds flooded with tributes, and news tickers flashed the headline that no one wanted to read. John Michael Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, had died peacefully at 76. The world mourned the loss of a true icon, a man whose voice and presence had shaped the very sound of rock and heavy metal for generations. Surrounded by his family in the quiet countryside of Buckinghamshire, Ozzy's final days were spent in the company of those he loved most. He found comfort in the laughter of his grandchildren, the warmth of his wife Sharon's hand, and the gentle support of his children, cherishing every moment as the sun set on a legendary life. After decades of defying the odds, surviving addiction, health scares, and the relentless pace of fame, the godfather of heavy metal finally took his last bow. His journey from Birmingham's gritty streets to global superstardom was nothing short of extraordinary, and he leaves behind a thunderous legacy that will echo for generations. Just weeks earlier, Ozzy had delivered a triumphant farewell in Birmingham, his beloved hometown, at the legendary Villa Park Stadium. The city that witnessed his humble beginnings now celebrated his monumental achievements, as fans from every corner of the world gathered for one final, unforgettable night. The Back to the Beginning concert was more than a show. It was a pilgrimage, a celebration, and a heartfelt goodbye. Fans, young and old, came together to honor the man whose music had been the soundtrack to their lives, lighting up the night with lighters and tears. Fans witnessed a historic reunion, a moment that many thought they'd never see again. The energy in the air was electric, charged with nostalgia and gratitude. Ozzy stood on stage with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, the original Black Sabbath lineup. Together, they unleashed the raw power of their classic hits, reminding everyone why they were the pioneers of heavy metal. As the final chords of Paranoid rang out, Ozzy, exhausted yet deeply grateful, bid his fans farewell in the city where it all began. The crowd roared, knowing they were witnessing the end of an era. It was the perfect end to a storied career, a moment of closure, both for Ozzy and for the millions who loved him. A legend left the stage on his own terms, surrounded by friends, family, and the music that changed the world. Ozzy Osbourne's spirit will live on, not just in the records and memories, but in the hearts of every fan who ever raised their horns to the sky. Before the fame, there was Aston, Birmingham, a tough place for a working-class kid like John Michael Osbourne. Ozzy's childhood was marked by poverty, dyslexia, and dead-end jobs, even a stint in prison where he tattooed Ozzy on his knuckles. Music was his escape, and the Beatles' arrival lit a fire in him. He wanted out, and he wanted to be a rock star. Driven by that dream, he placed a bold ad, "Ozzy Zig needs gig has own PA." That ad caught the attention of Tony Iommi and Bill Ward, who remembered Ozzy from school. Along with Geezer Butler, they formed a band that would soon change music forever. From the wrong side of the tracks, Ozzy was about to lead a revolution. The stage was set for Black Sabbath. The story of Black Sabbath begins in the industrial heart of Birmingham, England, where four young men, Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, first came together as the Polka Tulk Blues Band. Their early days were spent jamming in cramped rooms, surrounded by the sounds of factories and the grit of working-class life. They soon changed their name to Earth, playing blues covers in local pubs and clubs, honing their craft and building a small but loyal following among the city's music lovers. But everything changed one night when Geezer Butler, inspired by the eerie atmosphere of horror films, asked a simple question: what if music could scare people the way movies do? That idea sparked a creative fire within the band. Fueled by this vision, they wrote the song Black Sabbath, a track with a slow, doomy riff and haunting lyrics that conjured images of darkness and fear. It was unlike anything anyone had heard before, and it marked the birth of a brand new sound. Tony Iommi's unique guitar style, shaped by a factory accident that forced him to use finger prosthetics and downtune his instrument, gave their music a heavy, menacing edge that set them apart from every other band of the era. When their self-titled debut album Black Sabbath was released in 1970, critics dismissed it as too dark and too strange. But fans, especially young people searching for something real, embraced its raw power and saw themselves reflected in its darkness. The album quickly gained a cult following, spreading by word of mouth and through the underground music scene as more and more listeners connected with its rebellious spirit. Later that same year they released Paranoid, an album packed with anthems like War Pigs and Iron Man. This record catapulted them to international stardom, and suddenly Black Sabbath was a household name. At the heart of it all was Ozzy Osbourne, whose raw, desperate vocals became the voice of a generation that felt misunderstood and out of place in a changing world. With their thunderous sound and outsider attitude, Black Sabbath had invented heavy metal, music for outsiders by outsiders, that spoke to anyone who felt like they didn't belong. Ozzy was now the high priest of a new rock religion, leading a legion of fans who finally had a sound and a band to call their own. Fame brought chaos. On stage, Ozzy was electric. Off stage, he was infamous for wild antics fueled by drugs and alcohol. The stories became legend biting the head off a dove at a record meeting, then a bat on stage, cementing his madman image. Arrested for urinating on the Alamo, banned from San Antonio, and rumored to have snorted ants on tour, Ozzy's excesses were mythic. But the chaos took its toll. Addiction strained his relationships and reliability. By 1979, after 8 groundbreaking albums, Black Sabbath fired their frontman. Ozzy spiraled into depression, convinced his career was over. The Prince of Darkness was exiled, left to face his demons alone. But his story was far from finished. After Sabbath, Ozzy hit rock bottom, struggling with addiction and personal demons that seemed insurmountable, until Sharon Arden stepped in. Sharon became his manager, his confidant, and eventually his wife. She pushed him to get sober, guiding him through the darkest times with unwavering support. With her help, he formed a new band featuring guitar prodigy Randy Rhoads, whose talent was undeniable. Blizzard of Oz, his 1980 solo debut, was a smash hit, redefining his career. With hits like Crazy Train proving Ozzy's star power, he was back on top. Tragedy struck when Rhoads died in a plane crash, but with Sharon's support, Ozzy pressed on, channeling his grief into his music. He released hit albums through the 80s and 90s, each one cementing his legacy further. Showing a softer side with songs like Mama, I'm Coming Home, he connected with fans on a deeper level. In 1996, Ozzy and Sharon launched Ozzfest, a groundbreaking festival that revived metal and launched new bands into the spotlight. Ozzfest became a cultural phenomenon, a rite of passage for metal fans and bands alike. Ozzfest's success made Ozzy not just a performer, but a kingmaker and the genre's elder statesman. He was instrumental in shaping the careers of countless new bands, earning him the title of the godfather of heavy metal again. His influence was undeniable and his legacy unshakable. Ozzy's solo years were a resurrection, not just a comeback, proving that he was a force to be reckoned with in the world of rock and metal. Sharon was Ozzy's anchor, his wife, manager, and fiercest supporter. Their marriage was tempestuous but unbreakable, raising 3 children in a famously unconventional family. In 2002, MTV's The Osbournes made them global celebrities, revealing Ozzy as a loving, bewildered father. The show was a phenomenon, but fame brought new pressures and public struggles. Sharon's cancer diagnosis and the children's battles with addiction played out on camera. Ozzy admitted the constant cameras fueled his own relapses. Yet the Osbournes humanized him, showing the world a vulnerable, devoted family man. He became a cultural icon, beloved by millions who'd never heard a Sabbath song. Behind the Prince of Darkness was a father and husband trying to hold his family together. Ozzy's greatest battle was with addiction, a war that began in his youth and nearly destroyed him. Substance abuse fueled his madman persona but cost him dearly, leading to blackouts, arrests, and even a terrifying attack on Sharon. Rehab became a recurring chapter, but Ozzy never hid his struggles. He spoke openly about addiction as a disease, sharing his pain and shame with raw honesty. Fans saw not just a rock star, but a survivor fighting for his life. Relapses haunted him, but with his family's support, he kept fighting. By his final years, Ozzy found a measure of peace and sobriety. His story was a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope. No matter how far he fell, Ozzy showed it was possible to rise again. Decades of excess caught up with Ozzy in his later years. Diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2019, he faced chronic pain and a series of debilitating injuries. Multiple surgeries left him nearly crippled, forcing him to retire from touring. A devastating blow for a man who lived for the stage, yet his creative fire never dimmed. He released Patient No. 9 in 2022, a Grammy-winning album reflecting on his life and legacy. Even as his body failed, Ozzy's spirit remained unbroken. His final Birmingham performance was an act of sheer will, a last gift to his fans. The Prince of Darkness refused to go quietly. Ozzy's death ended an era, but his legacy is eternal. With Black Sabbath, he invented heavy metal, giving a voice to the outsiders and changing music forever. As a solo artist, he reinvented himself, influencing generations of musicians. Ozzy was more than a musician. He was a cultural phenomenon, a master of spectacle and a global icon. Through the Osbournes, he became a beloved, relatable father figure. Fans loved him for his authenticity, flawed, vulnerable, and unapologetically himself. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but his true legacy lives in the hearts of millions. Ozzy was a survivor, a rebel, a pioneer, and a family man. The Godfather is gone, but his music and myth will echo forever.